Welcome back to the Explainer, everyone. Today, we're jumping right into Class 11 of our fashion design series, and we're setting the stage for a true high-end masterclass on garment architecture. We're picking right up from our foundational work to tackle two of the absolute most critical elements in design, necklines and collars. Seriously, if you're looking to elevate a garment from looking slightly homemade to strictly couture, this is exactly where you need to focus.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. Neckline basics and parameters. 2. 7 classic neckline types. 3. Gaping fixes and finishing. 4. The fundamentals of collars. 5. 4 classic collar styles. And wrapping up with 6. Advanced tailoring and mistakes. Let's get into it.
Section 1, Neckline Basics and Parameters, Building the Foundation. Okay, so we're starting by looking back at that basic bodice sloper you drafted in classes 5 and 6. To turn that base into something new, you have to understand the core rules. And it's honestly wild to think about, but just 3 simple parameters control absolutely every neckline design you will ever create. Depth dictates how low the neckline opens down the front of the body. Width determines how far it spreads out toward the shoulders. And shape is exactly what it sounds like, whether the line's are round, straight, or forming sharp points. All right, if you take nothing else away today, please write this down. This is the absolute golden rule of necklines. No matter how dramatic your design gets, that shoulder point cannot move. Your shoulder seam length literally must remain identical to your original block. If you mess with this, your front and back neckline circumferences won't match up at the shoulder and side seams, and the entire structure of your garment will just fail.
Section 2, 7 classic neckline types, the core pattern shapes.
We're going to treat each of these like a distinct geometric cut. So the round or crew neck is really your essential starting point. It's the most common shape you'll draft. You simply drop the front center point by 2 centimeters, widen it at the shoulder by just 1 centimeter, and connect them with a perfectly smooth, symmetric curve. This is the baseline. Now, what happens if you ditch that curve entirely? You get the classic V-neck. You decide on your depth at the front center and draw a straight line directly from the shoulder point down to that mark. No curves whatsoever. Just a clean, sharp, striking V. Want something a bit more open? That's where the scoop neck comes in. You just exaggerate the round neck's depth and width. You're taking that front center point way down, we're talking 10 to 12 centimeters, and sweeping a large, gentle curve up to the shoulder. It's basically just a dramatically magnified crew neck. Okay, things get a little tricky with the sweetheart neckline because it's a compound curve. It usually incorporates a dart shift from the waist, a technique you'll remember from class 10. It features an inward concave curve dipping down to the center, paired with outward convex curves forming the lobes over the bust. Because it combines both curve types, it's a prime example of where you're going to need both clipping and notching to finish it cleanly. We'll get to that in a minute. Next up, pure geometry, the square neckline. Straight down from the front, a sharp 90-degree turn, and straight across to the shoulder. Because of those strict 90-degree angles, finishing this requires a very specialized diagonal corner clip right into the inside corner. If you don't clip it right up to the seam line, the fabric will bunch up in a really ugly way, but if you do it right, it sits perfectly crisp. Then we have the boat or bateau neckline. This is a masterclass in maximizing width while minimizing depth. It's incredibly shallow, dropping only 3 to 4 centimeters down the front, but it sweeps almost entirely horizontally across to your shoulder points. It's a gorgeous classic look. Rounding out the top 7 is the halter. This one is advanced because you aren't just altering the neck, you are manipulating the armhole and the neckline at the exact same time. It relies heavily on those slash-open manipulation techniques we covered earlier to create a shape that sweeps upward and ties behind the neck. Section 3, Gaping Fixes and Finishing, Achieving Professional Clean Edges. So you've drafted your beautiful shape, but you hit the classic beginner trap, gaping. This is when the neckline, especially on deep V's or scoops, stretches out and droops away from the body. To fix it, you have 2 professional options. You can use a neckline dart, which permanently transfers excess fabric out for a closer structural fit. But honestly, your first line of defense should always be preventative. Use a stay stitch or stay tape. Applying a non-stretch tape or stitch right at the seam line stabilizes the edge before you even attach a facing. It stops gaping before it can even start. Let's break down the strict 4-step sequence to get that couture level edge. 1. Always apply interfacing to your facing piece so it holds its structure.
2. Choose your finish. You want a fitted facing for shapes like squares and V-necks or bias binding for tight curves. 3. Apply your edge relief cuts. And 4. Understitch. That means sewing the facing directly to the seam allowance so it stays locked invisibly inside the garment. This is huge. You literally cannot mix these up. Clipping versus notching. For a concave, inward curve like a neckline or the dip of a sweetheart, you make straight cuts, clips, so the fabric can spread open. But for a convex, outward curve like a collar edge or sweetheart lobes, you absolutely must use notching. That's cutting tiny V-shaped wedges out of the fabric so it doesn't bunch up when you turn it right side out.
Section 4. The fundamentals of collars, anatomy of the neck edge. Now we're moving from flat necklines into the 3D realm of collars. The secret sauce here is the roll line. Flat collars, like a Peter Pan, have a roll line directly at the neck edge. They just lay completely flat against the body. Standing collars, though, actually rise up against the neck before folding over. That means their roll line is physically raised up and away from the neck edge. Plus, collars require perfect notch matching and negative ease, meaning the collar's neck edge is cut slightly smaller than the bodice so it sits snug.
Section 5. 4 classic collar styles, standard industry collar types.
Let's look at the heavy hitters. The Peter Pan collar uses a bias grain to lay perfectly flat, ideal for blouses. Contrast that with the Mandarin collar, which you'll see on banka galas or kurtas. It has no fall at all, just a 2.5 to 4 centimeter stand that needs a straight grain and sturdy interfacing to stay upright. Then you have the classic shirt collar for formal wear, which has both a stand and a fall. And finally, the shawl collar. This one is unique because it's cut continuously with the bodice lapel, making it an absolute staple for tailored blazers. Let's zoom in on that absolute workhorse, the shirt collar. It's fascinating because it actually physically separates the stand and the fall into 2 entirely different pattern pieces. You draft the stand on a straight grain to wrap the neck firmly, and the fall folds over it. And you know what's really cool? The actual seam connecting the stand and the fall becomes your permanent built-in roll line. Finally, Section 6, Advanced Tailoring and Mistakes, the Invisible Finish. Okay, lean in for this one, because this is an actual couture secret. When beginners draft a 2-piece tailored collar, they often end up with bulky seams peeking out from the edges. Why? Because they cut the top collar and under collar the exact same size. Don't do that. Couture tailors intentionally cut the under collar 2 to 3 millimeters smaller per edge. When it's stitched and turned, that smaller under collar actively pulls the seam line underneath, totally hiding it from view. It's magic. So, I'll leave you with this. As you practice drafting today and analyzing those old shirt collars for your homework, I want you to go look closely at the clothes in your closet. If you were to sew a tailored blazer right now, are you ready to apply these exact parameters to make that collar seem completely invisible? Understanding these hidden mechanics is the leap from just sewing to true design. Keep analyzing, keep drafting, and I'll catch you in the next explainer when we tackle advanced sleeve